Hello everybody and welcome to the fourth video in our series of videos on the French Revolution. As always, we begin with our learning outcomes. By the end of this presentation, you guys should know how the National Assembly treated the Catholic Church in France. Second, you guys should know what the Flight of Varennes was and some of the consequences of it. And finally, you guys should be able to give an account of the events leading up to the Champs de Mars Massacre. Last time we saw how the Women's March in Versailles led to Louis XVI and his family being forced to leave the palace at Versailles and relocate to the Tuileries Palace in Paris, where the Parisians could keep a closer eye on him. This event was the end of the first phase of the revolution, but its consequences were key to kicking off the second phase. First, many of the old Second Estate felt things had gone too far in the revolution and they decided to leave France until the revolution had ended. These people were known as the émigrés and they wanted to overthrow this new system. They would leave the country until this new system was overthrown, and some of them would actively try to overthrow it from their bases in other countries. Another consequence was that the National Assembly, which had been also stationed in Versailles, moved to Paris. It was here that like-minded delegates of the assembly started living in the same areas and started establishing clubs. As we saw before the Women's March, the Conservatives had already been working together to try to steer the National Assembly in the direction they wanted. But now the more radical delegates began to work together, and it was here that the famous Jacobin Club was founded that we will be looking at in a future video. It is also here that more moderate delegates were part of a group called the Society of 1789. So they were kind of between both groups. The move to Paris also gave us the in the new building that housed the National Assembly. The Conservatives always sat in the right wing, while the Liberals always sat in the left wing, and this is where we get the political phrasing "the left wing" and the right wing from. Now, the next big move was by these left wing or more liberal delegates who convinced the Assembly to vote for the nationalisation of the church and the confiscation of monastic lands to sell to raise money for France's debt. So remember, France was still in serious debt at this time. So in February of 1790, the civil constitution of the clergy was proposed and passed in the National Assembly, which meant that the clergy were now under the control of the state. The clergy would now receive a state salary instead of the old feudal tithes, which had been abolished during the August decrees, and the pay of priests actually went up while the pay of bishops went down. The Pope rejected this constitution, and after months of negotiations, priests were forced to take what was called the Civic Oath, or an oath of loyalty, saying that the country was more important or had more power over the church than the actual Pope. If they didn't take this oath, they were fired. So while 1790 seems like a pretty radical step, it was a relatively calm year, with the liberal but not too liberal Society of 1798, led by people like the Marquis de Lafayette, a guy called the Comte de Mirabeau, having control of the National Assembly. But in 1791, things began to change. First, on the 28th of February 1791, an event called the Day of the Daggers occurred. So on this day, unfounded paranoid rumours that Louis was trying to leave the country led to riots in Paris, and there was this confrontation between Lafayette's National Guards and the sans-culottes who were rioting over this, and there was also a confrontation with the Conservatives who were trying to fight back or to protect the king, is how they saw it. So Paris is becoming like a powder keg. All this led to Louis actually deciding that it would be a good idea to get out of Paris. So an elaborate plan was concocted, and the family tried to escape on the 20th of June 1791. But there was many unforeseen delays in the escape plan. While they did get out of Paris, they were eventually recognised in a town called Varannes. They were recognised thanks in big part to Louis's distinguished nose. So the royal family was brought back to Paris in disgrace, now with with massive consequences come from it. So this incident is known, because they were caught in Varennes, is known as the Flight to Varennes. So what this did is it brought about a fear that Louis was conspiring with the Austrians to suppress the revolution and invade France. Um, and people began to really worry about this. People were then became more angry at the emigres who were outside the country, who they believed were conspiring against the revolution too. It also really takes any trust that is left in Louis XVI and throws it out the window. One of the other big consequences of this is that it led to radicals in Paris calling for the monarchy to be abolished and a republic to be called. Now we've talked slightly about the Jacobins, but there was an even more radical group, and these were known as the Clergy Club, and they were led by guys like Camille Desmoulins. Remember, Desmoulins was the guy who roused the people to attack the Bastille. A guy called Georges Danton, who becomes quite important, and a guy called Jean-Paul Marat, who was a particularly violent populist journalist. They called for protests against the monarchy and to have him removed. They had these violent protests on the Champs de Mars on the 17th of July, and this led to Lafayette's National Guard opening fire on these violent protesters, with up to 50 people being killed. So this was known as the Champs de Mars Massacre. And again, Paris is like a powder keg at this point, and constantly moving towards a more violent, more radical revolution. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. So by now you guys should know how the National Assembly treated the Catholic Church. You guys should know what the Flight of Varennes was and some of the consequences of it. And finally, you should be able to give an account of the events leading up to the Champs de Mars Massacre. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys got something good from this video.